Okay, well, we're off again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, May 12th to order. And it's 6:32. Started a little late because our committee of the whole went a little longer than I anticipated. I would just start off by respectfully acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, represented today by the Kasepsin and Songhees nations, whose stewardship of these lands continue to this day. Okay, so the agenda, last minute changes. So listen carefully, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to look for a move-in seconder to adopt today's council amended agenda, and these are the following changes. There is a notice of motion, item 6.1 from Councillor Jordison, and basically it's just a request for a letter to be sent to Souk District 62 for an expanded roadway. The second part is we're going to have a whole consent agenda. That's item 7.1. And that's just Josh Andrews septic system conversion options, which was a deferment to July 14th. I just put that on consent. And so there is a third item, but I'm going to vote on that separately because it's a motion for same day consideration. And usually we hold those for urgent, emergency type of items, but it does require majority consent by council. So for the first two items, I'm just looking for a mover and seconder, please, of the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Jordison, Councillor Grove. Any discussion on the agenda, the amended agenda? No. Yep.
I didn't understand what's on the consent agenda.
It's just what we just discussed in committee of the whole. And that was the recommendation to council for the septic system conversion options, which we deferred to July 14th. Make sense? Okay, on that note, any opposed to the amended agenda? Seeing none, I will, motion carries. And now I have to go to the new item, which is going to be added as business item 8.4, and that's Councillor Jordison. And she has made a motion on regarding safety concerns at Lagoon and Machosen Road. And she's requesting this on an urgent basis. I need a motion and a mover and seconder. And Councillor Day, and I'm going to assume Councillor Jordison, since it's your motion. And any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And all those opposed? It's going to be discussed on May 26th, believe me. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on. So that item will not be added. We'll move on to Mayor's message. I just have a simple message. Again, I just want to thank everyone, all Colwoodians, for attending the Ideas Fair Town Hall on Saturday afternoon. And I particularly want to thank the two people that organized it, Shailene Eastman and Sandra Russell. A lot of hard work in organizing and planning the event. And actually to all the staff members who, no, I didn't. And I just want to thank everyone who participated. And it was a great showing. Staff members, all your happy faces there. Or did we force you? No, it was really good. Thank you very, very much. I think, we certainly learned a lesson in trying to put it in a smaller venue. It was, just from the feedback that I got yesterday on Sunday was that the location wasn't quite right. It was funny how most people thought, oh, I'm not going to go down there because I'm not going to pay for parking down there. And when it was free, in actual fact, no matter how much we announced it. So there were some of the people that did not show up because of that. And anyways, again, thank you very much. I'm going to go on to item 4 right now. Adoption, receipt of the minutes. May I have a mover and seconder for the adoption and receipt of the minutes under section 4.1 of the agenda, please. Thank you. Councillor Olson and Councillor Grove. Call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Move on to our favorite part of the evening, public participation. We had one written submission that was received prior to agenda publication, and it's appended to today's agenda. One written submission was received after agenda publication, and it will be appended to the agenda tomorrow. No members have been, of the public have registered to speak virtually. And at this point in time, anyone from the public, I don't see, no one from KPMG is allowed to come up. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Anyone from the public? Oh, okay, please.
Yeah.
Absolutely, please. Could you just identify who you are and your address, please? Little silver, yeah, perfect.
Okay. My name is Sophia Palahiki. I live in Royal Bay.
Okay.
So I am here today due to a series of unfortunate events, unfortunately, recently, in the last 2 weeks. So the first thing that I'd like to bring forward is a discussion around safety. So unfortunately, I was ill and I had to leave my home at around 3:30 in the morning seeking medicine. And I returned to my vehicle and there was a strange man in my vehicle. The man was arrested. This occurred at the Petro-Canada across from the Colwood corners. So the gentleman, as far as I know, was without a home because he was from the Lower Mainland. That's the information that I have. I also know that there are other folks without a home that are along that stretch from the 6 Mile up to the trails at Royal Roads University. I don't have a solution to bring to you, but I think there needs to be a discussion around safety and also a discussion around how we may be able to support those folks who are under the influence of substances, as this individual was, to make a decision that was made that essentially put my life at risk. So that's the first thing that I'd like to bring forward for discussion. The second thing I'd like to bring forward is I recognize there is a medical clinic that is being proposed. I've been on the wait list for a doctor for 11 years living in Victoria.
I'll give you another minute and then you're gonna have to.
Okay,
wrap
and
it
then
up,
I have to
please.
leave?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
I'll-
No, you don't have to leave. You just have to wrap it up.
Okay,
please.
I will wrap it up. Considerations, and I know this is broader than Colwood. I know there are provincial implications. I actually work for the provincial government. Considerations for an urgent and primary care in Colwood for folks like me who have to drive at 3:30 in the morning to seek medical help. So conversations around that, I think, are also really important in our community. So I think I will leave those 2 items for consideration. There are some others, but those are the 2 pressing items that I'd like to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your feedback. I do sincerely appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anyone else? And here I thought you were with KPMG. Anyone else would like to speak at this point in time? Seeing none, I will close the public participation and move on to item 6, which is a notice of motion. Councillor Jordison, if you can simply read your notice of motion, please. Oh, sorry. And this will be considered at the May 26th meeting.
That the City of Colwood send a letter to School District 62 notifying them that the City of Colwood is in the process of pre-design for an expanded roadway on Machosen Road, and that the encroachment approved by council in 2011 will need to be removed by a specific date. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Jordison. On that note, we'll move on to, that was just a notice of motion. Like I said, it will be considered at the next council meeting. I will move on to item 7, which is the consent agenda, and there's just one item, and that's item 4.2 from the committee of the whole meeting, which was the deferment of Josh's report to July 14th. Okay, thank you. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Grove. Discussion. Seeing none, motion carries. Okay, this is the most complicated agenda because there's so many modifications here. We will now move to new business. It's now item 8. It was item 6 before, and it's item 8.1. Kathy McLennan, or actually it's KPMG first, correct? So Lenora Lee, I know very well. She's here to present the audit results from our 2024 annual financial statements. Over to you, Lenora.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having us at your meeting tonight. Tonight, we wanted to share with you the highlights of our audit findings report, which was included in your package. The purpose of this audit findings report is to share with you the highlights of our audit procedures in advance of acceptance of the financial statements, which are also included in your package tonight. On page 4, we've identified a few highlights of the report, which I'll touch on in subsequent pages. Overall, in terms of audit status, we are substantially complete. We were on site here last month and worked in one of your offices here, asked many questions to staff and reviewed a whole lot of documentation. We are substantially complete our work, and there's no unusual outstanding items at this time. The only items that remain are discussion with yourselves tonight, as well as receipt of the management representation letter, which we did receive this afternoon, and it's timed concurrent with the acceptance of the financial statements. Overall, the auditor's report you'll see in the financial statements is a clean and unqualified audit opinion. It indicates that there's no material errors in the financial statements, and they do present fairly in accordance with public sector accounting standards, which are the accounting rules that the city is required to follow. In the current year, there was 2 adjustments that were noted, which I'll go into detail in this report. Generally fairly insignificant, both attributable to the consolidation of the West Shore Parks and Recreation Centre. We do annually confirm our independence. There's no other services that KPMG has provided that would impair our ability to execute an independent audit. We also speak in this report to control observations, and there was no significant or material deficiencies in internal controls that we noted. So just as a reminder, the consolidated financial statements of the city incorporate its own operations plus its portion of ownership of West Shore Parks and Rec. The consolidated materiality that was applied was 1.37 million, and that resulted in a posting threshold of 65,000. So if there was audit differences that we noted, that was rounding, for example, $10 difference between an invoice and what was recorded in the statements, we would not have suggested those for adjustment. If it was greater than 65,000, we did recommend those, and they're included within our findings report here. The next few pages speak to areas of risk and focus. So in our planning report, we had identified that the fraud risk over management override of controls is always a significant risk, and it's always a fraud risk. That's the same for all companies, public or private, any year, that's embedded right within our audit standards, that we have to take that as the default position. There's no additional risks related to the city that are driving this to a higher than usual risk. And in our planning report, we identified a few procedures that we perform as a result of this risk, primarily looking at entries that are recorded in and around year end, anything outside the normal course of operations, significant estimates, areas that require judgment. And in performing each of those procedures, we had no concerns or issues to bring to Council's attention. The next area of focus relates to revenue, accounts receivable, and deferred revenue. Much of this work relates to government grants. The city received about 3.6 million of government grants in the year from a variety of sources: gas tax, housing, climate initiatives. There was BC Hydro money received, Whale and Wilford, as well as the Galloping Goose Overpass Bridge. These are all various sources of grant money that all have different terms attached to them. Some are quite broad in terms of the spend, and there isn't specific reporting back as to how those monies need to be spent back and reported to the donor. Others are very stringent and do require very specific reporting. Each of those terms drive how and when revenue is recognized and recorded in the city's books. So a focus of our attention here is really understanding the terms of these grant payments, as well as where in the process the city is in spending the monies, as well as what type of performance obligations or what it needs to do essentially in order to earn those monies. There's also monies that are recorded in unearned revenue or deferred revenue. So if the money is received in advance and has specific obligations or things the city needs to do, it will be recorded in deferred revenue first and then recorded in revenue as it's earned or as it's spent on its intended purpose. So in this area, we spend a lot of time reviewing those particular terms. And we had no issues or adjustments proposed related to that particular source of revenue. This year, there was also a new accounting standard adopted, PS 3400 revenue. And similar to the performance obligations in government grant accounting, that was the new requirements of this new standard. So looking at other sources of revenue, in particular impacting municipalities, is around permit revenue, that historically some municipalities have recorded that on a cash basis when received. The standard required review of whether or not any deferral is needed because there are specific inspection points, for example, related to building permit revenue. The city had already recognized a portion of permit revenue as deferred on receipt. And so through management's assessment of the impact of this standard, they concluded that there was no monetary impact on the adoption in fiscal 2024. And we concurred with that outcome as well. The next area of focus relates to tangible capital assets. During the year, there was about 10 million of capital assets purchased, another 5 million of developer donated assets, and about 3.7 million of amortization expense. In this area, we review a sample of invoices and payments made to third parties to ensure the values agree to what's been recorded in the financial statements. In regards to donated assets, we review the value that has been confirmed by the developers, again, through support with third-party invoices to determine that the value recorded as donated is appropriate. And in the area of amortization, we review the useful lives of new additions as well as assets in use to determine if the expense or depreciation of those assets is appropriate over time. This year, there was also a new accounting standard in this area related to public-private partnerships. This new standard attaches both definition to what a P3 is as well as accounting. The definition is fairly narrow, where there needs to be a partnership with a private sector entity to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain a joint asset. The city reviewed the standard and identified no P3 agreements that it has entered into, and as such, this section did not have an impact on the financial statements. Also in our work over capital assets, we had not noted any errors or adjustments. And then lastly, on this page, we've described some work over accounts payable, payroll, expenses, cash, investments, and debt. In the area of payroll, we review trend analysis as well as comparison to budget. We take into account the collective agreement and the wage increases built in there for QP and Fire at 3%, for example. We spent some time reviewing cutoff to ensure that transactions related to 2024 are recorded in 2024, and those that are related to 2025 are excluded. And in the area of debt, investments, and cash, we confirm directly with third parties those values. This year in particular, there was 4.6 million of additional debt that was obtained, and so we were able to confirm those values directly with MFA. I mentioned there was one corrected and one uncorrected misstatement that was identified. Both of them relate to West Shore Parks and Recreation, and as I mentioned, the consolidation, so adding your portion of ownership into the city. So there was no error in the West Shore statements. There was no error in the city standalone statements. It was merely adding them together that created the error. And what it relates to is where transactions have been incurred with yourselves. So the corrected one was where the city provided some grant money to West Shore. And so in your statements, it's recorded as both revenue and expense, where that was eliminated. And then the unrecorded one relates to values that are in deferred revenue that were provided by the city. So overall, those are fairly immaterial values. And as I mentioned, each of the standalone statements are correct. So there's no qualitative adverse impact on having these items as both corrected or uncorrected. And then lastly, we also confirm annually that there are no significant or material control deficiencies that we noted. So this would arise if in the course of our audit work, we identified a significant gap in the internal controls that could put at risk an error not being detected. We do have an obligation and requirement to communicate that to council. The last page here just indicates that in terms of disclosures in the financial statements, those are all consistent with the requirements of public sector accounting standards. You'll see there some reference to the new standards that were adopted in the year. And as a result, those are also described in the notes to the financial statements, that those have been a change and new area for this year. Lastly, the appendices, I won't go through in detail. What you'll find in here is a copy of the representation letter that we have received. New accounting standards that will be in effect in the future are summarized in the appendices, and we will continue to work with management on adoption in advance. The next standard is not in effect until 2027, so there is a little bit of a reprieve after a couple heavy years of adopting asset retirement obligations and assets in the current year. Those were the highlights I wanted to touch on in this report. Finally, just wanted to conclude with a big thanks to the finance team and the city for all of their assistance in the audit process and a very clean result. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Lenora. That's great. Great report. I'll open the floor to council for questions. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you so much. It's I'd like to say I'm starting to understand these more as I see more of them, but the one thread that I make a note of each and every time we hear from you, whether it's here at Parks, West Shore Parks and Rec, risk to management override. How does one get out from under this risk? Like what I mean, I clearly we're meeting the standards because that's kind of what you said. So how do we mitigate that risk completely?
Yeah, it will always appear in the planning reports and findings reports. So we would like to also, but it's embedded right within the audit standards. So every year we are required to address some area of management override of controls. I would say that there's nothing unique or special to the city that is driving this to be an extra risky area. We do review things like the citywide controls, so your code of conduct, your policies and procedures, your hiring procedures, and all of those are as expected. We do review, your internal controls around approval processes. So there's separation of duties between signing of checks and delivery of checks, as well as preparation of bank reconciliations and review of bank reconciliations. So there's nothing unexpected that is causing that to appear in the reports.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a couple questions from me, Lenora. The new accounting standards, are they insignificant? are they going to have much of an impact on municipalities?
The standard that will be effective in 2027 is a presentation standard, so
Mhm.
it won't impact measurement, it won't introduce new liabilities like asset retirement obligations. So the key themes are that one of the statements is being replaced. So the statement of changes in accumulated surplus will be a new statement introduced, and it will replace the statement of changes in financial assets. Pretty technical stuff that, you know, it's geography more than valuation or quantification of figures.
Okay, good. And the second question, I always ask this every year, I guess, since you've been coming here, is there anything that you think we should have asked and we didn't ask?
No, I think we cover all of the common areas of questions within our audit findings report. Anything related to significant risks, significant deficiencies in internal controls, processes, we comment on all of that in here. And then in terms of other emerging areas, that's generally in our appendices. So we do get a lot of questions around, you know, cybersecurity, around AI related to that, around risk management. So I know those are all on your regular agendas for discussion as well.
Yep, super, thanks. Thank you very much, Lenora.
Thank you.
Over to you, Kathy, I think, right?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, my apologies to all of council and any public who are watching for the late timing of this report. That is not by design and not without a chagrin, I guess might be the appropriate word. I did prepare some slides, but since council probably has not had much time to consume this report, we could probably just walk through if that's okay with you, Mr. Mayor.
Super, thank you very much.
Okay, so I just kind of highlighted here for everybody the auditor's role, which you just heard and Lenora just spoke to, and then the role of finance now and the CFO is just to provide this analysis here, which is, as we know, the financial statements can be confusing or contradictory to what we see throughout the year when we are looking at financial statements on a budgetary surplus approach versus the accounting standards and the PSAB rules that we have to follow. So overall, on page 2, we noted that when we look at the surface of the consolidated financial statements, that revenues were under budget by 3.7 million and consolidated expenditures were under budget by 1.7. And so I just kind of wanted to walk through, we'll get into revenues a little bit later, but that's on the consolidated statement. And so if we look at, I don't know that you want me to speak to the differences between budgetary and accounting. It is in here, but for example, one of the major things is under PSAB, capital assets are not expensed. And so the rules that we follow under the community charter to do our budget is more of a cash basis, shows all the money's coming in and going out, versus PSAB is looking at the financial position as in that asset is going to last you for 30 years. You're not expensing that. That's going to sit on your balance sheet, and that's the purpose of amortization. And that's why we amortize every year a portion of that asset. So it's the PSAB guidelines are really in place to show what is really the financial position of the entity at a point in time, and the versus the PSAB, the budgetary surplus under the community charter, which I have sort of developed a chart here that you can see on page 3. And it walks us through the surplus that you'll see, the accounting surplus on the surface of the financial statements, which is 14.3, which I like to highlight because everybody thinks, what are you going to do with that $14 million? But we don't, it's not like that, right? So then when we add back the amortization, the transfers from reserves and deduct transfers to reserves, add back the debt funding, which is not really a source of revenue, right? It's funding expenditures. And when we deduct also the principal payments, because again, under PSAB, that goes on the balance sheet. We're paying down debt under capital community charter. That's a cash flow item. So once we account for all of those cash and non-cash entries, we're left with a budgetary surplus of 216,000. This is on the consolidated statements. So that includes 81,000 that West Shore made. And so the city's true portion of that unconsolidated is 135,000. And then that is further broken down by the sewer deficit, which we had predicted all year pretty much, and at the third quarter, which is 139,000. That is a little bit inflated this year because under PSAB, we had to start accruing interest this year because it was material with the introduction of the new debt for sidewalks. So we had the luxury in prior years of just recording interest as we paid it. But now with more, as we take on more debt, it became a material item. So it is accrued, but it is sort of like just a non-cash entry that we understand in our heads. It's not really contributing to that deficit because we didn't budget for it. It's 45,000. And then also there was a recovery in 24 of 12,000 that we had, 22,000 that we didn't collect in 2023. So there's a recovery of 23 and that addition of 45. So anyways, it's the true deficit is around 113 and we'll see that. And then we had a operating general surplus of 274. So that was a lot of words to sort of describe that. I hope it's clearer that how we differentiate between the accounting and the budgetary surplus. So then I wanted to highlight on page 4, these are like when we talk about that surplus, then how did we get to 274? Because we budget for 0. So you can see, I just highlighted the factors that are actually contributing to that surplus. And one of them that we have been talking about since the quarterly reporting is that payments in lieu of taxes, which we did get a significant increase in 2024 because there was a property that had been dropped from our registry. It got reassigned a new folio, and so we got retroactive payments back to 2022. And so the reason the budget increase is so high is because we started adjusting our budget downwards because we weren't expecting that revenue. So it was a nice transaction to have that restored to our tax roll through the efforts of the team to chase down why we were no longer getting that revenue. Investment income is high, budget overage by 1.7, which we were also predicting. And that is sort of driven, you'll notice that it's not in this one because it doesn't drive the surplus, but because our capital expenditures did not occur to the extent that we were expecting, we have incurred a little bit more, incurred is probably the wrong word, but we have generated a little bit more investment income. It's a timing thing until we realize and actualize those expenses, those planned expenses. Did you want?
Sure. Councillor Day?
Sorry, my brain gets stuck when I didn't quite understand something. You're on to the next item. But it was about the payments in lieu of taxes and something dropping off of our roll and coming back on.
Yeah, through the chair, BC Assessment, they assigned a new folio to one of the properties that we typically collect PILT from. And so it got dropped from our list of PILT revenues. And so we were following up and that was restored this year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. I'm always conscious of the time and then I try not to whip through this stuff because I've been staring at it for days. So the sewer deficit I have talked about, so there is that 114 and user fees were down a little bit. You'll notice like when we talk about the sewer deficit, that's not something that is then funded like if we had an operating deficit. The sewer deficit is recovered through the future year user fee, and we have already incorporated that into the 2025 bylaw. So that utility has to be self-funding, as council is aware. So that's how we recover any deficit or surplus. I don't know if there's anything there to speak to. Really, the user fees were under, connection fees were under, and that is driven by connections, so service. It's just that service connections that as we heard earlier today, can be quite pricey. So there was actually operating expenses were over by 142. Another question?
Yeah, sorry. Trying to read here at the same time.
Sorry for just hollering out because I needed to understand. I was curious about the the sewer deficit, because the user fees, we obviously didn't quite plan for enough user fees this year. And we will amend that in 2025. But how do you keep track of that? Because it's something that I have seen jump up and down a few times over the years. So I'm just wondering if there's a way for us to fix it.
We do, sorry, through the chair, great question. We do have to determine the levy, and we don't always know what the CRD requisition is going to be. And that is largely what drove this deficit this year, is because when we got the requisition, it was much higher than we had anticipated. And then we just always recover it in the following year and hope that that scenario doesn't recur. And this year it was significantly higher because it's based on the prior year flows. And there was a large increase that we weren't anticipating in any case. So when we do the sewer user fee, we are always trying to look at whether debt servicing is changing. And so there might be increases in that way. Whatever increases we know are coming, we try to build those into the sewer user fee that we bring forward so that it breaks even. We're never trying to
So this
over levy.
CRD requisition was more because there was a higher flow or because there was a higher cost for infrastructure?
My understanding is the increase was based on the flow because it was the waste management levy.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, sewer LAS deficit we talked about. Revenues, so I sort of touched on revenues when I was talking about the drivers of surplus. So now this graph here on page 5, and now we're just talking about the results for Colwood and not the consolidated results. And we know our operating revenues were over by 2.6 that we have spoken largely about, attributable to the PILT. Investment income we spoke about, and operating grants did not meet budget by 0.9, and this shortfall is largely offset by a reduction in the special initiatives. So it's not like it really contributes to our surplus or not. If it's the only operating grants that really affect us in that way are the ones that we truly consume through services, which are like the small community grant, the traffic fine sharing, the casino revenues, those grants that we get annually that we actually apply to services. But the other ones that are tied to special projects would not have an impact on our surplus or deficit, but they're a factor in when we're looking at what revenues did we budget. And so because we had a decline in operating special initiatives, there's a decline in operating grants. And then departmental operating revenues were a $200,000 budget shortfall. And some of that can actually be attributed to the new accounting standard, because although we were already deferring building permit revenue, we were not applying that same logic to some of the fees that we see in development services or engineering. So we did have work to do in that area this year, and we did defer some revenue that we otherwise would have just recognized in the year. And then the sewer utility, that revenue shortfall, like we talked about, was based on sewer user fees, connection fees, enhancement fees. I'm sorry if some of this is repetitive. I was just trying to mark out all the sections that were relevant and contributing to those highlights. If we shift to capital revenue now, again, this is going to be it doesn't affect the surplus or deficit, because capital revenue is funding capital spend. And so we were under on capital spend, so capital revenue is under budget. So on page 6,
Bottom table.
and so the developer contributions for reserve, those don't fund the capital projects, but those are always challenging for us to predict. We are trying to predict when development will trigger. We know the list of developments that are planned to be coming up. We meet with development, we meet with engineering, we meet with building. And we try to forecast those to the best of our ability, but we can't always do that accurately. And so development contributions are driven by when developers decide to act. And those contributions fund the transfers to reserve. They do not hit the surplus or deficit either. Whatever we collect, we move directly into reserve. And so then the next one, the DCCs and the capital grants, those are the ones that, although under budget again, they are driven by the capital activity on projects. And those did not occur to a large extent. We heard Lenora talk about our $30 million budget, 30 or 33, and we only spent 9. So those projects are delayed, or as we know, some projects had some significant delays this year, and though they will still, they're still planned in the next
So it's
financial
a
plan.
timing issue too, so.
Exactly. And so the last item that is interesting is the developer contributions other, which is the contributed assets. So when we record those assets under PSAB, we have to record the revenue. And it is not a cash item, obviously. It is just our recognition so that we can flow that through to our equity, that we now have equity in these assets that have been transferred to us by a developer. So that is that. Expenses weren't super exciting, really. The departmental, because we were so close, we were really close on budget. We were 100% or 97, I think, in overall. So departmental expenses, we were only 0.8. Looks like 80 cents. Sorry for my fancy chart here. We were only 0.8, I should say, under on our expenses. And for special initiatives, we were the 1.5 that I mentioned. And then there's the amortization and actuarial amounts that affect those dollars. So the departmental expenses, even though I'm saying we were 97% of budget, which is very good metric, like we're spending to what the services were budgeted. There was an $800,000 surplus in the policing department, and that we have little control over that, but it does get transferred to the police building reserve annually. So that is just something to highlight, because that is the primary driver of the variance. Although there were pluses and minuses, which you'll see on the budget summary that is shared so that you can compare the results to what you're used to seeing. There is up and down within the departments, but overall we came in right on, pretty much right on budget.
Kathy, can you just remind us all right now, that $800,000, it goes into the RCMP, a reserve fund. Can you tell us how Colwood taxpayers benefit from that? So where do we use that? What do we use that money for again? Can you just explain that to me again?
Yes, thank you. That money is being, it is a council direction that we make that transfer, and that is because I think we're trying to prepare for the detachment. So right now, we did spend some money in 2024 on the detachment. The part of, I think, our 1.2 for getting all the, what do we call that? The initial pre-validation. Yes, the pre-validation. Thank you. So we spent $104,000 of that this year. And so we are continuing to transfer any police surplus, and usually it's not this high. There was an annual.
That's big.
Yeah, they do an annual adjustment annually. And this year it was quite high. And so we have little insight into that. And I did call RCMP this year, federal department, just to confirm, is there something I can be picking up this year? And they, of course, said, no, there's nothing. So I don't think they know about it until they reconcile their own books. We usually get it in July. So if we have another one, we just don't have much control over that. But
Okay, thank you. No, it was that significant that it picked up.
yes, it was much higher this year than normal. Yeah, of course.
Just if I may add on the topic of the policing surplus, it's not uncommon. We typically are generating a surplus in this service area. And inside of recent years, we have adjusted our budgeting practice. So we are reducing our budget. So the tax funded proportion for this service delivery in recognizing that annually our service is not actualizing where it is authorized. And so we have been reducing that budget in an effort to improve alignment. And so that is something that I would suggest should continue to be a focus as we tax for this service each year.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. And like I said, this is just such a big number that, you know, wow. I'm just sort of scratching our head a little bit and, yeah, about why we raised our policing budget. Now, I'm not talking about the econ, but okay, thank you. Yeah, oh, sorry. Councillor Jensen, please.
Thank you. And the 800 grand is nice to have in our jeans, but it's not a good sign. That means that those hours spent with a police officer on patrol didn't happen, which is why we're getting a refund for a variety of reasons. And quite frankly, I would rather see that zeroed out completely, which means we're getting the full bang for our dollar. That's just a comment. Thanks,
Thank
Kathy.
you. The next item that I wanted to talk about was just the financial position of the city, and our financial position did continue to improve this year. And I also reported on some of the recommended statements of recommended practice under PSAB, commonly referred to as SORP, which is not my most favorite acronym. But in any case, I wanted to start reporting on the ratios that we've been talking about incorporating in finance. We want to start using more metrics. We want to start doing more performance benchmarking. And so these three that I have adopted here just are representative of our financial position and under sustainability, flexibility, and vulnerability. And as I was reporting on the metric, all of our metrics are very strong. But when I looked at vulnerability, it's based on government transfers. And so we are not very dependent on those. And it's meant to indicate as there's changes at other levels of government, how strongly we're aligned with that or will be affected by it or impacted by it. And we're not super high. It was higher in 23 because of the growing communities. That was a large grant. But what came to mind was it's interesting that PILT doesn't fall under this metric. It's just based on government transfers. So going forward, I may create one for ourselves just so we can continue to measure how reliant we are on the PILT revenues, because that does feel like a risk to us.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about that because I realize it kind of falls into this category, but when we were having the audit presentation, we've added 4.6 million of additional debt was one of the notes that she mentioned. And the question that always seems to resonate with residents is, well, how solvent are we? Should we have use debt servicing for those things that we have. So I think that might be something that would be helpful in future reports. And I just thought I know it's probably lots of things. It's probably, sidewalks and bike lanes and a few things like that. But I just wanted to comment on it because it's something that for most people listening to tonight's meeting, it would be something that would jump out to them.
Yes, thank you. I think if I had prepared all the metrics that I wanted to, council would not have been loving me any more than you are tonight for this later report. And lastly, reserves. We always like to highlight on our reserve position at the end of the year. And this is this last chart on page 8 shows the flow of, doesn't show the flow, but it shows the change in year over year on our reserves, and is a reflection of those increased transfers due to the increased revenues from PILT and investment income. We do transfer that investment income, like I was mentioning, based on the funds that we are holding, so they would be the recipients of that increase in investment income. And so if there are no other questions, and there can still be questions, but I just wanted to say that the motion is, of course, the recommendation is that the financial statements be approved as presented by Lenora.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from council? I just have a quick one right now. What's our servicing, our debt servicing, our ratio to revenue? We're sitting at what, 6, 10?
Like to our
9%?
eligible revenue, we are
Yeah.
currently just at 8%.
Okay,
And
8%.
if we do leverage the 8.3 for PW and another 24.2 for RCMP, like if we get to those, that will double, like we'll be at, I think I had metrics of that earlier. I do have a spreadsheet where I calculated that all out, but we will be at 30% by then. So that leaves us room for another 60. And that value will grow presumably as our revenues increase year over year, because it is a factor of income.
Did you say what percent with the public works building and the RCMP?
We'll be at 30% if we, once we do those.
30% of revenue. That's pretty scary stuff. That's really scary. Okay, and my second question, it's a fun time here. What keeps you up at night? Crystal balling, because it's not like this is spent, right? So you're
Yes,
reporting
it
spent.
is. I think
So
I
there's
alluded to it a little bit.
future things that are happening right now.
Yes,
There's a
thank
lot of
you.
things that could impact us, but what's
I-
keeping you up at night?
I think it's not keeping me up at night, but I do get, I do want to understand our risks better and build more risk profiles and risk evaluation and risk analysis into our financial processes so that we
Okay.
can at least understand the risk, even if we don't have a mitigation in the moment, we can at least understand it. And so we do try to identify all of our risks and we do state them in the financial plan. But there are, risk disciplines. And so we can borrow from some of that without hiring our own risk professional just to understand our risks and manage them better.
It's a great answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, someone want to make the motion, please? Recommendation? Okay, Councillor Jensen, seconder, please. Councillor Ward, discussion? Seeing none, is there any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy. Great job. Again. Yeah, I can understand your frustration. It was so funny because I actually had to print them all out because it was late and I says, I don't have time to do all these. Thank you. 8.2, Councillor Ward, you're on. Oops, sorry. Oh, you're talking too there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you. So this stems from a notice of motion from last council meeting around what I would like to seek, which is a direction that staff engage with what's now Path Developments, formerly Gablecraft. This was drafted a while ago, to explore a potential for a dog park on a parcel of land in sort of North Royal Bay. Rather than wax poetic as I usually do, I prepared a slide deck, which I thought would be the easier way to kind of walk through it. Yeah, so let's go next slide here. So basically some background on it. I mean, dog ownership, anecdotally, I think everyone knows there's a lot of dogs in Colwood. Our region is widely considered one of Canada's pet capitals. I mean, weather is a factor, obviously, lifestyle, recreation, and so on. There's over 70,000 dogs in the capital region. That's an old stat. And that's assuming, based off licenses and things, which isn't accurate. It's just more predictive that there's more than that. And then talking with CRD licensing, I mean, again, not all dogs are licensed. Typically people license them to take them to facilities and things like that. But if licensing is any indication, South Colwood or the Royal Bay area is home to the largest concentration of dogs in Colwood. But Colwood in general is recognized as very much a dog-friendly community. So we can jump forward here. So the rationale, ironically, we heard it earlier during our committee of the whole meeting.
high density in the region limits owner access traditional yard space, and the smallest lot sizes for single family homes in Colwood are in Royal Bay and Beachlands area. In addition to that, I mean, you've got 4 large condo buildings currently occupied, 2 more under construction and more underway, which would have no real footprint for pet owners. You've also got at least 8 or 9 townhome developments in there, some of which have as many as 165 units. So you've got a lot of people, lifestyle wise, that are going to still, young families, as we know in Royal Bay, that will have pets, but they don't have those big yards that you see elsewhere in Colwood. So right now, current off-leash dog activity, and a first-person view, I live there, is really happening at Meadow Park, the School District 62 fields, and most likely eventually in Quarry Park, where at one point you'll recall we had looked at the feasibility of a dog park. Where you know that reactive and recall challenge dogs can be a safety hazard in reality, and sometimes just perception. People can be scared of them. Kids with neurodiverse situations can have issues with pets and so on. And sooner or later, we run into the potential for mixed use to cause a problem. Meadow Park is a pretty small little green, and there's a lot of dogs there. So just to digress from here, I was down at Meadow Park today speaking with the owner of a dog training facility called K9. And she specifically brings the dogs and other trainers down there because they want to go to an area where they're more likely to encounter young children, strollers, bikes, and a ton of other dogs. It's to train reactive dogs around other dogs. And she said she can't think of anywhere else in this region that is busier than Meadow Park with dogs. And then we know historically some of the on-leash requirements we've started to impose to rein things in were not well received. So for example, the on-leash ask in Havenwood and Latoria Creek was met with, you just need to go on Let's Talk Colwood and take a look at the responses. That was not very popular. Let's jump forward again here. Thank you, Marcy. So just some stats here, social and community benefits of dog parks. They promote walkable neighborhoods, increase a feeling of collective safety. And generally they build community. You know, people in their suburbs walk frequently with their pets, interact with other people. It encourages a lot of social gathering. Next slide, please. And dog parks increase the likelihood of social contact and foster a sense of community, as I said. And interesting, it promotes inclusivity as well. It breaks down barriers between people. The demographics of dog park visitors across North America don't matter in forming relationships. People from all walks of life bond over their dogs. And this is just taken from social media from a Colwood Creek Colwood Creek Dog Park Facebook group, where they have, a golden retriever meetup. And there's a whole lot of other dialogue that goes from there. Go to the next slide, please. So when we're talking about a dog park, we have to talk about site considerations, and space is subjective, but it should be long enough to throw a ball, throw sticks for dogs to play, essentially, right? Smaller than a city lot, less than half an acre, is not recommended, but it depends on usage. And you need certain things. That's the reality, right? You need access to water, which we do have on this site. You would need some parking, which could be a challenge here. You'd have to install some seating. You'd have to have double gates. You can have play equipment and other things. Again, you can also have different types of dog parks. You can have urban dog parks. You can have rural dog parks. You can have a huge field where dogs run free, or you can live in an inner city and have a very small 50 by 50 space where dogs can just exercise. Next slide, please. So the location I'm referring to here is the flat land, basically the top of North Royal Bay between Mendez Place and Machosen Road. There is just sort of a loose hedge and even an informal trail off Mendez Place at this point, accessing into the property. As you can see, there's only 4 homes that directly abut the property. 3 of them with just the side of the home facing the area. It's also about 2,400 square meters, or over a half an acre. So it meets the criteria for space for a dog park, and that it exceeds the half acre. Next slide, please. So that's the view looking west from Machosen Road. There's a wider space at that end. It widens out significantly where you have a major trail connection. So the advantage to here, although technically this land falls within Royal Bay, you're actually at the same height and level as all of the neighborhoods in the lagoon as well as Wishart area. So it becomes accessible to a lot of groups there because of that trail junction. So you can see sort of my rather amateur AI rendering of what a dog park there might look on the right with that same photo looking west. Next slide, please. A worse AI photo from the same direction, but basically this is looking east, just from the west of Mendez Place, so almost at the end of that flat property. It narrows down, but it's still quite wide there. And it shows you the length actually of just how big a piece of property is in terms of what we're talking about there. It's a lot of flat land as you get towards Machosen Road there. Next slide, please. So this isn't meant to be an exact replication, but this gives you an idea of what you could do with a longer parcel of land like that. In fact, it would actually be the reverse of this though, where you've got the much wider end at the Machosen side. You would have a sort of an airlock style gate, right? Two gates, one enter, close it behind you, enter the next one. It would be quite wide there with a, you could potentially put a small dog option. Oftentimes you see this in dog parks where there's a, less than 30-pound section where it's a fence within a fence, maybe a smaller 3-4 foot chain link with separate entry once you're inside so that the small dogs go in there, and then you have all of the other open space for the larger dogs. But again, you could have to visualize kind of the reverse of this, because in the Machosen, in that Machosen Mendez area, the wider area is actually at Machosen Road, where the main entry most likely would probably be. Next slide, please. Actually, I think that's it. Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. I've been canvassing people in the neighborhood for weeks now, talking to a lot of people in Royal Bay. There is significant interest in something. A lot of people were under the impression that there would be a dog park in the Quarry Park side, so they were kind of waiting patiently for that. We know we've removed that from the table, and I think sooner or later people will be aware. We have an opportunity here. At one point, the developer had sought to consider putting properties there, and the neighbors were, as we come to know in Colwood, very opposed to anything that might go there. And then they explored other things like a community garden, which kind of fizzled. But Path Developments is very open to working with us on this if the city chooses to explore it.
Thank you very much, Ian. That's a great presentation. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you ever want to win me over, just show me pictures of puppies and you got me. But I just had a couple of notes here. I just wanted to express my support for Councillor Ward's motion for bringing another off-leash dog park to Colwood, as specifically North Royal Bay. Based on our population, our current population, I think best practice is like one to every 10,000 residents, there should be a dog park. And we're obviously falling short. We currently only have the one at Colwood Creek. I think that the Royal Bay residents lack walkable access to an off-leash dog space. And I think with the continued growth in the Royal Bay and the Olympic View area, the demand is going to just continue to grow. And I think that having a dog park in this area also helps to support responsible dog ownership and reduce conflicts in shared park spaces. So I think this is a win and a very positive motion. So I just wanted to express my support. Thank you for bringing this forward. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. Excuse me, kudos to Councillor Ward for the photos and the I thought were quite masterful AI renderings there. You could have fooled me. So I appreciate that that kind of backgrounder. A few questions. Yeah, I mean, there might not be answers, but some of the things I noted, first off, I mean, is this our property? Is this the developer property? Things like maintenance and the cost of the materials and stuff like that. I mean, presumably that'll be part of the discussion. But the motion itself really just directs staff to connect with the developer. It's not to deliver or to report back. I mean, is that? I mean, I'm assuming there'll be something coming back at some point. Those are a few of my thoughts. Certainly, it'd be hard pressed to oppose something like this, but I'd love to sort of get my fellow councillors' opinion on some of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward, would you like to address these questions?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jansen. Great questions. Really, my thought on this, it stemmed from a conversation with Bennett Path, who indicated in his view, he believed that the property was city, a designated city park. I see a nod from Gord in the back there. So my thought with this really was to hand it to the city if we, if my fellow councillors agree to push it forward to have that discussion, but to advance it to a discussion to see what can we do? What are the barriers to doing something there? Is it feasible? What would the cost be? So essentially to come back with, either with hey, it's possible, but it would cost X roughly, and I say rough estimate. I know staff are very busy. Gord may think I have a make work project lined up for him weekly at this rate, but that's not the case. It's really just to get a ballpark, an idea. And, and if staff come back and say, no, just it's impossible, this is the wrong spot, happy to have just explored it. I think I just owe it to the community to try to put it forward. That's really the thought process behind it, is to get some semblance of an idea. Can we do it? Knowing that the land is ours, and, leave it to our team to discuss with the developer what might they be able to do as well. I know unfortunately we lost a lot of parks DCCs by not pushing that forward when we did. The Coral townhomes right below there would have paid for this whole thing, but it's neither here nor there. So that's the thought behind it. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I love the idea of creating off-leash dog parks, finding good level ground where we can fence an area that isn't already claimed by someone else is definitely a real advantage. I would just encourage us not to get too carried away about it being a car destination. There are parking opportunities to walk to this location. There's parking by the Dunsmuir School, for example. If you were coming on a weekend, that's a short walk away. There's a really good developed trail system now that's going to Wishart Road from that area. There's the Sea to Sky Trail Network is also close, and it offers an opportunity to take your dog for a walk through an area that requires you to keep your dog on leash and be well behaved, and then gives you a destination you can go to where they could actually get off leash, do some play, do some socialization. And those things are good for people and good for dogs. And it's also got a beautiful, fabulous view, and it also meets the needs of the residents nearby to be protected, safe, not loud, well-maintained and looked after. So I think it could be a real win-win and be part of extending our walkable community.
Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was involved in a bit of exploration of that site for the community garden, which is, the demand is still there. It's not fizzled at all. It's just that what I heard back, and I don't know if Gordie, you have a better answer than I've received about how the community garden was decided to move from there. There wasn't an actual meeting that I attended. Do you know any further about that? There had been concerns about the resident objection access, which would have to be made like for a dog park or, and also parking. And then of course the cost, which you would have for either event. But, and then another question would be perhaps there's room for both up there. I'm not sure.
I think the major thing for the community garden was also the exposure to, it just wasn't a good growing area for the community garden as well, with the wind and
The wind.
yeah. And it's pretty hot up there as well. Pretty relentless as far as the heat's concerned. So that was the major thing. And we, we would have to, there would have to be engagement done with the community. I mean, there are two houses there that are directly in front, and through experience, through just some of the programming that we've done up there, and when Path was building the trail network, there were definitely some concerns from the homeowners.
Yeah. So I thanks for that. That helps my understanding, because it's basically where I thought it was. The dog park, I think, would be a great use for that patch. I mean, it's just, I walked it the other day, and it's a lot bigger than it looks like from the road. And I think you were on site we had a meeting last year, and you made reference, or we were chatting, I think, just casually about that slope, which is significant down to the path that drops down to Royal Bay, and the spectacular view, perhaps the best in all of Colwood, of the mountains and the strait, is absolutely unbelievable. And you said, oh, we could just drop some benches in there, like, which of course sounds easy, but and a bit of a rail fence or something attractive, and use it so it could be almost like a family destination for that as well. Whether the dogs are playing or not, it would be attractive for that. So I can support this idea being looked at and studied for sure. And whether the developer is still keen on participating, I'm not sure. They had indicated some interest in the community garden support, but we've been trouble finding a location that would suit it. Do you have any comment on that front, or if we have
The developer was keen with that community garden when they were in ownership of the land.
sorry?
When they were in ownership of the land, when it wasn't turned over to the city. So
Yeah.
when they still had.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. So that we're looking for a site that might still be in the developer's hand and is in that transition period to City Park. There's agreements on various parcels, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it is now all city property. It is
Yeah,
all
okay.
now city park.
Yeah, okay, cool. So that's sort of a sidebar, but I like the site for that. And I think that if it's a community park, it should be used. That'd be nice to have it used. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll just summarize. I'm very supportive of this, actually. I'm very supportive of it. I guess the only things that parking is still an issue, and you know, Councillor Day makes a good point. Make them walk. Okay, yep, I agree. It's just that just remember, we just moved the food stall across the street. And remember that little food stall from many complaints, and we finally got success, got someone happy now. It should be too bad to make them mad for putting people parking, but you can put signs up, I guess, to avoid that. I guess the only thing that it's a real issue is just the 4 houses that are affected. Kind of nice to have their buy-in to that. It's always, that I was, in principle, they always used to say something, if you built it in a new development, it's easy to put something like that in, right? But when you put it in an established place, it's like putting a pickle court there. You got dogs and loud, and kind of nice to get a buy-in if you can from them to, hey, we plan this. Anyways, that's all I have to say. But I'm generally in support of it. I'm in support of the recommendation that we obviously take a look at this area as well as other areas. So. Anyways, I will see no other comments. Did we have a mover? Have we moved the motion? No, we didn't. I guess Councillor Ward is moving it, second, Grove, and any other discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Simple. Okay, we shall go to 8.3, Councillor Day. It's all yours. This is from the notice of motion from the last council meeting. Yeah. Sir.
Thank you. As most of you know, I've been here for a long time, and public participation has been a big part of something that I tried to bring to the forefront when I was first elected back in 2002. And I've tried all along to work to increase the knowledge of our residents about the decisions that we're making on their behalf, and where I'm seeing that a lot of people, you can try really hard to get people engaged and involved and informed. And then it can be kind of a double-edged sword where we instituted, some limits on time at the podium in order to keep things concise and be able to keep meetings moving, which is all understandable. But somehow along the way, it has come to be that the public participation portion of the meeting is not being recorded in the minutes. Instead, it's just being added to the agenda, which most people would never look at again after the meeting has occurred, whereas the meetings are a reflection of what happened at the meeting. So since people come to the podium and they speak and they tell us something that they feel is important, I would just like to, without making it terribly onerous, include that in the minutes of the meeting by under public participation, sharing the letters that they have brought forward or sharing their names and address unless they request otherwise, that they were there and what they said, with a brief note in the minutes, just so that it's a record that they came and they gave their input. I don't think this needs to be really difficult to do, and it provides an opportunity for us to recognize the impact that residents can have on the process here.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Day. Before I open it to council, I need to get an opinion right now on legalities, procedures, processes from a corporate officer's point of view, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So our current practice is that correspondence that's received during public participation is either attached to the agenda prior to the publication or correspondence received after publication. We give up until noon on the day of the meeting and we attach it to the agenda the following day. So in order, just so you know, for correspondence to be included, residents are supposed to email corporate services, and staff do confirm with those senders that their correspondence will be attached to the agenda. And if correspondence is submitted directly to council, which sometimes that does happen, and we get a hold of it, we will reach out to those residents as well to see if that was something that they intended to have on the council agenda. In our minutes after these meetings, we do include a brief description of the correspondence that was received. So that is in the minutes. Our current council procedure bylaw states that minutes of the meeting will be decision-based. They'll include a brief summary of the discussion and comments will not be attributed to individuals. And just so you know, our practice since 2015, when we started webcasting our meetings, was to no longer include the name and address. One of the reasons was to protect privacy. And I can give an example of, we had an elderly woman that came to the podium, provided her name, provided her address, and then stated that she lives alone. And so for us to put that out on our website through the internet, that it's accessible, was a privacy issue. So that's one reason why we switched in 2015 to just include Colwood resident, or in some occasions we might put the road if it's relative to whatever is being discussed. And generally, minutes that we do here are action-based, and that is generally what most municipalities do, is action-based minutes. Verbatim was once upon a time something that was done by many municipalities, but as we've progressed and we have webcasting and the availability for people to watch the meetings, it's kind of changed. So that's just some general information on where we're at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the context. Councillor Ward, I'll let you start her off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to say that I agree in principle. I think anything we can do to encourage and foster public participation is a good thing. You'll recall that I'd introduced that motion quite some time ago about allowing people to speak, not only at the beginning of the meeting, but before a particular agenda item. And that's so that they really felt heard. And I think credit to you, Mr. Mayor, we've helped create that environment, I think, with this council throughout. One of the advantages we have in meetings is that we let people come to public participation and speak to any topic. Our neighboring municipality, for example, limits it to agenda items only. And my concern with including minutes to a meeting has nothing to do with the nature of the motion. I mean, I like that. It's just that sometimes I've seen people come and speak at the podium, and I would be hard pressed to ask our corporate services team to understand what is the point. And I don't say that, facetiously, but there has been some people who come in and go, what is that? That's not anything to do with the agenda today. It's out of left field, and to include a brief synopsis of what they were getting at might require, an interrogation afterwards. So I had some concern about the secondary part about adding, in actual stand-up speakers. And the name and address piece got me as well. I've long thought we should not be asking people for anything beyond even a first name or last name and the city perhaps. Privacy is a major issue in the healthcare environment that I work in my day job. And, you know, to see an environment where it's broadcast publicly is a little dated. So I do think though that the first part, the public participation letters being shared to, or sorry, appended to the meeting minutes is relevant. I think, you know, if you miss a meeting, you know, you go back, would you want to look at the agenda? I mean, if you've looked at the agenda in advance, but you still can't be there because you're going to be on vacation, but you want to catch up and read the minutes and get a brief synopsis of what occurred, what decisions were made, it wouldn't hurt to know that, you know, if there were 10 letters opposed to a particular item and then a decision went one way or the other, you could draw your own conclusions from that. So I see some logic in that. So I would support that portion of it with an amendment to the latter component. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you. I won't repeat what's been said because I think it's on point. I'm trying to understand if our current practice is to attach them to the agenda. I mean, are we talking tomato? They're included. They're not lost. They are attached. So I guess it just becomes an issue of where they're attached or where they can be found. Are they searchable on our webpage? And like if someone's looking for comments, say about a specific development or letters about a specific development, or is that searchable? Marcy?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the correspondence that we do receive, we do make an indication in our council minutes that council received 3 written submissions relative to whichever item it is.
Okay.
Those are also attached to the agenda. So if you go onto our
Okay.
website, you can go see agenda, you
I
can
see.
click to the minutes, you can go to the video.
Okay.
It's all in one kind of area.
So it's logical.
Correct. And I am not aware of any municipality that does include minutes within their, or include within their minutes correspondence. Typically, minutes are action-based. There could be opportunities that they would be very lengthy. Our council minutes, if it forms part of our minutes, we also bind them for historical records. And
Gotcha. Wow.
I could see some issues with having, depending on what kind of correspondence is attached, but we definitely attach all of our correspondence to our council agendas.
Okay.
There's reference to it in our minutes.
Okay, thank you. So that makes sense to me, that process thing, because I guess I was getting bogged down on, you know, well, why wouldn't it be attached to the minutes if it's relevant to the minutes? But as long as they're referred to and it is itemized and they're not lost in cyberspace, I will concur with the comments. I think gone is the day and age of announcing your exact address and name. Quite frankly, I think that's gone the way of the dodo. And I'm comfortable with the process as is, as described by the corporate officer. Thank you, Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I think the first part, I mean, whether it's appended to the, as long as there's correspondence appended somewhere within the meeting, I think that that's sufficient. In regards to the public participation part, though, I do think it's important to note kind of a little summary, quick little brief, kind of like what we do in council with council minutes as to what the item was that they spoke about with public participation. For example, tonight at the beginning of our meeting, we had somebody speak at public participation, and I think it would be lost if we didn't have some sort of summary of that within our minutes. So if that's happening, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dave, but I'll speak right now. I'll just give you, I'll offer my opinion and why I'm not for this and I like the current procedure. It's hard enough to get minutes out as it is. And I don't want to be sitting there arguing with everybody what was said and wasn't said. You know, do we have to get clearance from the person that submitted it? And then they're going to say, oh, we don't want it. I'm not going to certify anything, to tell you the truth. I can certify what happened in the meeting. I can't always certify what the person in public is saying. So this is my bone of contention with it. You know, it takes us long enough to get the minutes out as it is. And this just adds to the time. So that's why I did like the current procedure. I always wondered why it was that way, but when I thought about this, I went, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Because, you know, I'm not going to certify it's correct, because how can I certify it's correct? I'm not the person that's recording, you know, what's being said in public. So anyways, that's just my opinion, and that's why I will vote against it. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just want to speak to where the letters are appended to the agendas. So the agenda is on the website, and when the letters are appended to the agenda, not included in the minutes, they aren't easy to find. And our search function has changed recently on the website, and it's really hard to find things. I'm not even sure how you would send a letter before the agenda, because our agendas are out well in advance of the meeting. So before you publish the agenda, I would have to know to send you a letter to include with the agenda that you haven't put out yet. So as a resident, I think that's a step too far to expect of them. Maybe a councillor might be able to do that if they want to do, but none of us are particularly good. Hence our notices of motion and things like that. Councillor Ward, you're the best at putting those forward. And I do understand that I don't want to ask staff to do something that's extraordinarily difficult. So I would be quite happy if at the very least we included, when people send their letters in, that we include them with the minutes, because as it stands, when a resident comes and speaks at a meeting, there is no record of it whatsoever at the moment. Not in the minutes, not that's acknowledged further down, and nobody's ever going to look at the agenda after the meeting has occurred. So I think putting it on the agenda does nothing to give that information forward, but putting it in the, attaching it to the minutes would. And I'm not saying you have to try to interpret somebody else's point of view, but I'd like to make the motion at least that we, where letters are sent in, that they be included in the minutes of the meeting.
Okay. Would tell you one thing, that then I want them to certify what's being appended, because I will refuse to certify the minutes unless they certify. That's an extra step that's going to have to happen right now, because I'm certifying something that I don't know is certifiable because they're not signed. That's a big issue for me. I don't know if you would certify them as correct.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor, certify the correspondence.
Oh, the minutes, because there's 2 signatures on it.
I don't know of any municipality that attaches correspondence to their minutes.
But I can see why.
But I can advise that we do provide a summary within our minutes. So for example, tonight, we did have somebody come and speak at participation.
I know that.
So we would put in there that we had a resident of Royal Bay that came and addressed council on a safety concern due to, et cetera, and as well the medical clinic. So we do provide a summary of the discussion. If that resident submitted correspondence, and sometimes that happens when we're at the meeting, we would attach it to the agenda. So there would be a reference that somebody could go, oh, somebody submitted something. We put it right in the minutes. So at least they know that something got submitted within the minutes or within the meeting.
Yeah, like I said, it's just personally, I know, you know, we used to get in arguments when the recorder is recording something and everyone's arguing what was actually said. And you spend another 2 weeks trying to, and you know, then we will go with unsigned minutes because I won't sign them personally. Not being vindictive, I'm just saying that I don't want to got enough things on my plate and I don't need that hassle. Not unless you want to just sign them. Yeah. Anyways, I think, sorry, Councillor Ward.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm walking down the fence on this one here, but I still understand both points of view and I understand where we're trying to go with this. But it opened up a bigger question to me because I'm just on our website looking at it. And if we're really trying to be transparent, which I think is the goal, how difficult would it be if a resident is submitting correspondence and they understand that it's going to be public, just to have a separate section on our website under the meeting portal where it just says resident correspondence received, and it's acknowledged, names redacted if need be, or address redacted, and it's just published.
I love it.
Just upload them all. And then the big issue, and I think Councillor Day, you referenced this, is how hard it is to find some of this stuff. I think it would frankly even help me, if I miss something, just go, did I miss a letter? Well, you could go there, you could take a look at all of the letters received. I see a hand from our CAO, so I'm gonna give up the mic.
We can certainly do that. Our agendas and the ability to search is going to change greatly with the new SharePoint system that we have, where we'll be able to do a lot more searches than what we have been able to do in the past. So we can include that, but the minutes of the meeting are intended to be the legal mechanism. If somebody needs to go back, they'll go look at the minutes. The correspondence was just submitted as part of the meeting. So I've never seen a municipality include that correspondence in the minutes. It's included within the agenda and then having a separate part. So we could certainly do that on the correspondence side for those in that interim measure to make sure that they have the prominence that council is seeking.
So, do you want to, is there an amendment? Oh, we haven't, have we made, yeah, you made the motion second. We haven't made the motion. We made the motion. No.
I did. I made a motion that.
Oh, it's committee of the whole. We just need the one motion anyways.
My apologies. Councillor Day did actually make a motion, but I don't believe I heard a seconder.
You don't need a seconder, it's committee of the whole.
No, we're in council right now.
Oh, we're at council.
Yeah.
It's been a long day, everyone. We just had committee of the whole. I'm sorry. Seconder, do we have a seconder? Okay, thanks, Council Ward. Any further discussion? Please.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. Is this on the original motion was what Councillor Day had put
Original
forward,
motion,
just
yeah,
so you
because
know?
It hasn't been modified yet.
Correct. Thank you.
Well, okay.
If you could just recognize my, I'll just tell you what I do. So that we know what we're talking about.
Yep.
So I heard discussion around the table that they were concerned with us asking staff to summarize what residents were saying at the podium. Recognizing that, I just made the motion that we only include the letters. Subsequent to that, I've heard that council would rather that we had the correspondence on the website as a separate category. I guess I'll take what I can get. But I'm going to tell you straight up, I don't think that shows very much respect for the time and effort that residents go to give their input as part of a meeting. For example, I attended a planning and land use committee meeting. I spoke at the podium. There was no mention of it in the minutes. Thank you.
So what is the motion then? That's what I'm trying to narrow down. Sorry. Councillor Day, please.
So the motion that I made was that we include the letters in the minutes. I don't think that's going to pass, so I will modify that motion, if I may, Councillor Ward, to suggest that we include on the website correspondence, and then all the letters that we receive will be there. I would assume in date order, Marcy?
Yes, Marcy?
I just wanted to ask some clarification on that. So we do receive other correspondence from mayor and council, and we do reach out to residents to just confirm whether or not they want their item on the agenda. And there are times that people will say, no, I forwarded it to mayor and council. I do not want it to form part of the agenda. So we do have to check in with residents on whether or not. So just for clarification, are you looking to put out correspondence that was just submitted for the agenda, or are you looking at all correspondence?
Any correspondence that residents would confirm they would like shared.
Fair enough. No, you can't. I'm sorry. Okay, Councillor Ward, will you stand by seconding that then? Yep, thank you very much. Discussion. Yep, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. Firstly, I'm getting confused because there's a lengthy notice of motion here and now it's been severely downsized, I guess. And then quite frankly, some discussion that I found was quite pejorative in nature and accusatory, like somehow that we're withholding information when all I've heard here tonight is the lengths that our staff go to publish, to collect, to bind, to record. And I can't stand behind that, and I don't accept that kind of discussion. If we're trying to find a way to do things slightly better, then that's great. Let's move in that direction. But I won't stand for any kind of commentary that alludes to the fact that somehow we're not being public with everything. If something happened on a one-off in a meeting, then that should have been addressed at the time, brought to somebody's attention. That's a bit of a statement. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions, I should say? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Motion carries. And that is all for new business at this time. I will just take a bit of a recess here for health reasons, and then we'll get into bylaws. Thank you very much. Okay, well, we're bringing it out of recess. And if I can get the corporate officer to read 7.1, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have Sewer Local Area Service Enlargement Amendment Bylaws going for first, second, and third reading. Bylaw 2062 for the Colwood Main Sewer and Bylaw 2063 for Colwood West Sewer, both for 506 Perks Road.
Okay, can I get a mover and seconder, please? Okay, Grove and Olson. Any opposed? Whoops. Yes, Councillor Day, go ahead.
Just, I have a niggle that maybe we've talked about this before, but I can't specifically recall. But I do know that this sewer expansion is already complete. It's already been done. And so I'd just like to ask why we do the work before we approve the bylaw.
Anyone want to take that one on? Joshua.
It's not a great answer. I apologize. I'm gonna have to come back with a specific answer to that.
Okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
This is the amendment, so, right? This is the amendment. That's why it's getting first, second, third reading. Yeah, it was, we originally passed the sewer LAS enlargement. If I remember right, we did, it had adoption and we came in with the amendment, so it's getting first, second, and third reading. It's an amendment, right? I forget. I don't know. Anyways, Councillor Day, go ahead.
Sorry, so this is enlarging the local area.
Yeah.
To add one address to the sewer,
Correct.
the main and the west.
Correct.
But I'm just saying it's at council and the road has already been dug up and fixed.
I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, where were we? We had a mover and seconder. Call the question. Yes, please. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on. 7.2. Well, actually, we will have Desiree just speak to the amended. It's as amended. The amendment, please. Go ahead, Desiree.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you know, Bylaw 1700-10 had a public hearing on February 27th. The purpose of this staff report is to respond to the public hearing comments that we received. And a summary of staff's response to each individual comment is provided in Table 1. Based off of the public hearing comments, we're only recommending one minor change to the bylaw, which is detailed in the recommendation of the staff report. And that's just to clarify that restoration of greenfields sites would only be required when recommended by a biologist or QEP, as they would have the most, they'd have the expertise to comment on that on a site specific basis. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you very much, Desiree, for that clarification. Any questions for Desiree? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I've been waiting a long time for this to come back and I feel less prepared than I was because so much time has gone by. But I was the one who proposed that council consider having the city do the SPIAs to ensure that they were protected. However, since then, I've had a look at our budgets. It seems like there's something like only $20,000 apportioned to doing these SPIAs for all of Colwood. And I'm concerned that by having us take on doing the SPIAs that it may not be beneficial to ensuring the protection of the environment to the highest degree. And suggesting that only qualified environmental professionals could identify issues with repairing areas, I think is really not fair to the many citizen scientists that have really contributed to the understanding that we have today of the ecology in Colwood. There are residents that have been involved in fish monitoring, fish trapping, that have put in year after year after year of volunteer labor in order to assess the environment, to prove what species are there. And it is those citizens who have the least to gain and the most to lose. And it seems so far that most of the responses that we've had have been from developer paid for and developer supported professionals without any questioning of their knowledge or assessments. And there's always a you know, a need to protect our environment from people who would profit from its loss. So I am concerned, and I wonder if staff could just speak to whether or not we have sufficient plans in place to actually protect those spias. It speaks to the fences, but it doesn't tell me whether those fences are going to be inside the wrapper or outside.
Desiree?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Day, and through the chair. The purpose of the provincial or of these updates is to provide stronger environmental protection of the riparian protection areas. And we're updating the guidelines to ensure that provincial acceptance is sought earlier on in the development process. And we do operate under a professional reliance model where we are relying on those qualified environmental professionals to define that SPIA, and that does get sent over to the province to be validated and ensure that it is correct. And I think these guidelines do also speak to the ability of staff to be able to request a third-party audit if there are any questions about the SPIA that they're proposing. I think going forward, we are planning to explore predetermined SPIAs. Part of this will be just really understanding what that would cost, and we'll be coming back with a report to outline for council how much that will be and how it will fit within the operational plan. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
See no other comments? Can I get a mover and seconder? Okay, Jensen, Grove. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on. Okay, go ahead with 7.3. What are you? Back to you, Marcy.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have bylaw number 2064, the tax rate bylaw 2025, going for adoption. And just so you know, the financial plan has been made available now on our website. Thank you.
Okay, Olson and Jensen. Discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next.
Bylaw amendments for short-term rentals, adoption, and it's bylaw number 1812-01, business license amendment for short-term rentals, and bylaw number 2071, fees and charges bylaw amendment for short-term rentals and business license fees.
We missed one. You jumped one.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, we'll do that one first.
On the same page, actually.
Yeah. Bylaw number 2072, sewer utility fee amendment, and it's for adoption.
Okay. Jensen. Grove. Discussion. Seeing none. And Councillor Day.
Given, I don't see a rate attached in the bylaw that we have here, so I just wanted to double check because the sewer user fee was underfunded last year, and I just want to make sure that we are sufficiently funded.
Kathy?
Yes, sorry. On page 2 of the bylaw, it lists the rates because we have the minimum rate of 425 and then the annualized rate like in the 2 tiers. So there's a second page there. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I see it now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect.
Call the question again. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next.
So this one is the bylaw amendments for short-term rentals going for adoption. Bylaw number 1812-01, business license bylaw amendment for short-term rentals, and bylaw number 2071, fees and charges bylaw amendment for short-term rentals and business license fees.
Okay. Mover and seconder, Ward and Olson. Discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Next.
Thank you. We have sewer local area service enlargement amendment bylaws for adoption. Bylaw number 2060 for Colwood main sewer and bylaw 2061 Colwood West sewer, both for 3448 Fulton Road.
Motion, please. Jensen, seconder. Hey, Jordison. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries and adjournment. Anyone you want. Take any two you want. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, motion carries.